What's doing, everybody? Today is Thursday, September 12th. President Trump crushes Kamala Harris in the presidential debate. Joe Biden puts on a Trump hat. Taylor Swift endorses Harris for president. And Maureen Bannon is back on the podcast. I'm Alec Lace. This is The Alec Lace Show.
The American family is under attack. Parents are the underdog of this nation. Your children are being indoctrinated. That's right. Your children. They do not belong to the state. They do not belong to the school system. They belong to you, the parents, as a blessing from God our Father. So let's preserve, protect, and fight for the American family together. You're listening to the Alec Lace Show. The future is family.
All right, here we go. Welcome, everybody, to the Alec Lace Show. I'm happy and honored, as always, to be here with you guys. Thank you for tuning in. If you're watching the broadcast as it streams live on Rumble, please get down there, hit the follow button, share the broadcast, and don't forget to like and get involved in the comments or the chat. All right, if you're listening or watching on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whatever, please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, whatever you can do to help me out. I would really appreciate it. And I'm also streaming today's broadcast live on Locals. If you're not following me on Locals, you'll find the link right below this video if you're watching on Rumble. If not, look in the description. You'll find the link to my Locals. I'm going to start doing these at the end of each episode, not today, but starting next week. I'm going to try to implement this, start doing a question and answer period after each broadcast to get you guys more involved in this. Again, I'm very much different than every other journalist or guy that you see out there. I'm a blue-collar guy. I work midnights on the railroad, and then I pop in here to do a show twice a week and share some thoughts and give my perspective on some of the things that are going on. I've been blessed and fortunate to have so many great guests join me on the podcast here. So if you like what you're seeing, please consider supporting the work that I'm doing here. Visit my Locals page, contribute if you can, and I'm going to be streaming these from now on Locals as well as the Rumble for the live show. And then after the live show, I'll start doing a question and answer period. Maybe I'll do some special edition interviews as well, and they'll only be available on the Locals channel. We're going to see what we can do, all right? I'm about a year and 3 months or so into doing this podcast. Some of you guys have been so great. You've been so supportive. I really appreciate all of your help in supporting this show. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If you missed out on Tuesday's episode, I had Senator Marsha Blackburn and Congresswoman Victoria Spartz stop by the podcast. It was an honor to get them on. Victoria Spartz talking about this CR resolution here, this spending bill that they were attaching the SAVE Act to. She went off on this thing, and yesterday it was pulled off of the voting box, the ballot. They're not going to vote on the CR. So she had a very interesting take on the CR resolution, the continuing resolution. So please, if you missed out on Tuesday's episode or interviews, please go back and check them out. They were very, very good. And today I have the honor of having Maureen Bannon back on the podcast. She is Steve Bannon's daughter, also the CEO of the War Room. So any War Room posse listeners out there, hang on. She'll be here in just a few minutes. Obviously, the big thing that happened Tuesday night was the first meeting between President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. And this thing couldn't have gone worse for Kamala Harris, especially you say it was an obvious 3-on-1 and really more of definitely a 2-on-1. This David Muir guy. Now, I'm not familiar because I don't watch mainstream media. I haven't watched ABC News in I don't know how long, probably since I was a kid. This David Muir character, this guy made a fool out of himself. They call this guy a journalist, and that is a far stretch. He's a phony, for one, the way he puts on his whole act. But number two, this guy was straight up debating Donald Trump on Tuesday night. I mean, it wasn't even like it was a question of whether or not he's actually having an argument back and forth with President Trump. I mean, it was so obvious that this guy suffers from Trump derangement syndrome. He's a far left lunatic, whatever you want, whatever he is not a partisan type of guy or a bipartisan guy. He has got a bias, and that was against President Donald Trump. That was crystal clear during this debate. And I'm sure that he would love another crack. I mean, he would love to see another debate between him and Trump, because that's really what this thing turned into. And this is why I say Kamala got beat so bad. When you have both of these moderators helping you out, doing everything they can to lead you into the questions. It's almost like leading the witness in a trial. Like they were doing everything they could possible to help Kamala, which we knew was coming. I had put this stat up here on Tuesday, and ABC is the most biased out of the big three mainstream media networks. 100% of their coverage of Kamala Harris has been positive. 100%. Not even 99%, where there was 1% of the stories that were negative or comments that were negative. They've never made a negative comment or had a negative story about Kamala Harris at all on this network, ever. Trump, 93% of the stories about Trump are negative. Only 7% are positive. And it's probably something like, he has a nice suit on. You know what I mean? It's not like it was positive in any kind of other way. So 93% of the time, they've been negative stories about Trump. What did we expect was going to happen? Well, we expected it to be a 3-on-1. It was a 3-on-1. It was, like I said, definitely a 2-on-1, because this David Muir character really made an ass out of himself during this debate. And I think Trump was authentic. I think obviously Kamala Harris was coached and had a pose. The poses were so annoying, like she was putting on a show. And I think that the Democrats that were directing her were so afraid of what happened during the debate where Trump absolutely trounced Joe Biden. And really, Joe Biden, the optics of the debate with Trump versus Biden were so bad. Joe Biden, while Trump was talking, looked like a ghost. He looked like a dead man walking. He was standing there with his mouth open and just looked in shock. He looked old. He looked tired. He looked very bad. So they were going to do the complete opposite when it came to this Trump-Kamala Harris debate. They were going to have her looking and posing and pretending and smiling and doing all these other things. They did not want a repeat of that. Trump, meanwhile, looked dead ahead at the camera, never even acknowledged her that she's in the room. The woman is a lightweight politician. She's a terrible debater. And I'll tell you right now, if she was going to have to be in 4 years, let's say Trump wins this election, and in 4 years from now, they're going to have a primary for the Democrats, and she decided to say she was going to run, she wouldn't even make the primaries again. She would not even come close. She would be nowhere near the top of the ticket of the Democrat Party. She'd be toast. And she doesn't belong in the ring with Donald Trump. She doesn't. Now, obviously, she was coached during this very well. She obviously had the answers, I believe, ahead of time, or the questions and the answers. She probably gave the questions to David Muir. But she seemed very practiced and rehearsed. We're going to talk. I want to get Maureen Bannon's take about this, see if her father, Steve Bannon, had a take on it as well. But I think even CNN called out Kamala Harris for not answering the questions. But let me give you the highlights real quick. I'll break it down of what I think best highlights from the debate where Donald Trump absolutely trounced Kamala Harris. Take a look.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. She has a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she has a plan to not allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay,
that's what her plan is. And these people did the worst withdrawal and, in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. We have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute. I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
And I love the fact that he got a chance to use her line that she was dying to use if they had the mics unmuted, which was the I'm speaking line. He said, I'm talking. That was one of the highlights there, and he snuck that in on her, which I think was great. Now, CNN. Now, I'm going to give I never thought I would say something like this, but CNN was far better and far fairer at doing the presidential debate than ABC was. I think CNN did a far better job, and I can't stand CNN or stomach them, but I think they did a better job. Now, Jake Tapper, he gave his opinion on CNN about Kamala Harris dodging the questions. I think he was fair and on point here because I think it's hard to lie about it. It's hard to say she answered the questions when she clearly didn't. So here was Jake Tapper's take on it.
Vice President Harris began the debate by punting the first question on the economy.
Do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America.
It went on from there. Despite the economy being the number one issue facing the country, the sitting vice president generally reverted to talking points about a few of her policy proposals. Even Harris allies today are saying that she needs to talk more about what she will do for Americans if elected. Senator Bernie Sanders will be here in a second to talk about more about the need for her to fill in some of those blanks. On the border, another vulnerable issue for Harris, she also dodged.
Would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings.
Okay, that wasn't the question. When asked how she would break through the Israel-Hamas war stalemate, Harris said this.
We need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that.
Okay, but again, how?
And I think that's correct. I think that's exactly what she did. I think she ran from the questions and she wasn't pressed on it the way that Trump was constantly pressed on it. So we're going to get into more of that in just a second with Maureen Bannon here. Maureen Bannon, the CEO of the War Room. This thing went viral yesterday. Here's Joe Biden putting on a Donald Trump hat. Look at this. This was great. And the optics of this are great because look at the smile on Joe Biden's face here. This was in a room full of Trump supporters, really, at the Pennsylvania. They're doing the 9/11 remembrance yesterday. And so Joe Biden put this on in good spirits. He handed them one of his hats. They handed him one of Trump's hats. And they asked him to put it on, and he did. And so the picture, I think, is worth 1,000 words there. Look at Smiling Joe. And you have, this must really irk Kamala Harris to see him wearing that, especially because Donald Trump called out the fact that we know that Biden clearly hates Kamala Harris. The guy, 6 days before they threw him out of the picture and off the boat and under the bus, this guy was telling you, hey, 14 million people voted for me. I'm running. And then they casted him aside like he was just a useless wet towel. They just threw him to the side. They dropped him like a wet towel. And so here he was wearing the Trump hat, smiling from ear to ear. And here he is in the picture with all the Trump supporters. And so, the comments, the stuff online about this yesterday were hilarious. Just like even Kamala Harris's debate was so bad that even Joe Biden is supporting Donald Trump right now, which I think, secretly in the Biden family, especially Jill Biden, who probably feels very, very scorned by what they did to her husband. Now, she should be ashamed of herself for allowing this guy who's half senile to be running for president in the first place. But I'm sure she's very scorned by what the Democrats did, the DNC did to her, and I'm sure maybe secretly in her heart, she's hoping that Kamala Harris has to eat crow and lose this presidential race. I wouldn't be surprised if they were really secretly hoping against her. But I don't know. They are Marxists and lunatics, so it's hard to judge. But here was Trump and Kamala Harris down at Ground Zero yesterday. Obviously, again, they did the night. Now here's the Joe Biden. We're being an idiot again. Here he is he's at the White House talking about what his plans were for the next few days. He's like, yeah, I'm going to be up in New York. I'm going to go over to Pennsylvania. Then I'm going to do 9/11. He says, I'm going to go do 9/11, as if 9/11 is something to do. And it's also one of these things where here's Kamala Harris down there at Ground Zero with Donald Trump. And by the way, everyone there is screaming, Donald, we need you back. They're obviously loving President Donald Trump. But imagine during the debate, you have Kamala Harris that once again says in an indirect way that January 6th is worse than 9/11. And you've heard these claims from the left before. She uses it in the same sentence as 9/11, January 6th. And it's like, then you're going to show up at Ground Zero? You're a fool. And the people that are out there that even claim that this could even be close, You should never be listened to ever again. If you make the claim that January 6th was a worse attack on our country than September 11th, you should be ignored. Like, no one should ever pay any attention to you again whatsoever. You're obviously an idiot, and you're just so full of Trump derangement syndrome that you'll say anything. Like, anything you say past that point should be null and void. And then you had the Taylor Swift came in with her endorsement swiftly right after the debate, which was, I think, obviously planned. But we're going to get into all of this right now with Maureen Bannon. I'm grateful to get her back on the podcast. She is the daughter of Steve Bannon. She's the CEO of the War Room. The War Room is one of the biggest reasons why Trump is going to win this election in November. The War Room posse is big, powerful, and huge, and they are, dynamite in everything that they do over there. So we're going to bring on Maureen Bannon right now, and we're going to get her take on the debate and all this other stuff. So let's do it.
You're listening to the Alec Lay Show. The future is family.
All right, here we go. Joining me now, Maureen Bannon. Welcome back to the Alec Lay Show.
Thank you again for having me on again.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me here. Obviously, Tuesday night's debate has been viral all over the place, and it was kind of obviously a 3-on-1 to anybody that watched it. So what was your initial take after watching the debate?
I agree. It was a 3-on-1, and it was extremely frustrating to see. I mean, it was expected that ABC wasn't going to be unbiased. However, it was very frustrating to see them fact-checking or attempting to fact-check President Trump. But then Kamala Harris is spewing blatant lies that have been debunked thousands of times. And they just went on to the next question. And there were softball questions. It makes you really wonder if she had the questions ahead of time and was able to prepare. I believe that she was, but, I don't think ABC will ever give us a clear answer on that.
I think, too, just the way that she was practicing those poses, like every time she had the hand under the chin, like all these strategic poses that were obviously rehearsed. And I think that was like their supplement for the fact that she couldn't say the "I'm speaking" line. So I think they tried to have it where she had those facial reactions to when he was talking, obviously coached. And when she was giving a rebuttal and she had to talk a little bit off the hip, you could see the clear difference from how she was speaking to when she was giving those rehearsed lines. Like right out of the gate, the first question they asked, she didn't come anywhere near close to answering the question. She went on a monologue and they didn't even push her on it.
Yeah, not at all. She didn't answer the question. And the fact that people have come out and said, well, Donald Trump didn't answer questions, he kind of deflected. Kamala Harris, like you said, right off the gate, didn't answer the question. She clearly didn't have a good answer for that question. She can't defend her and the cadaver-in-chief, Joe Biden's record. So, of course, she's going to deflect, but it just set a precedence that if she's going to deflect on that question, she's going to continue to do that the rest of the debate. And like you said, with the mannerisms and everything else, I think that when she didn't have an answer or a good answer to something, she was doing that, trying to, get Donald Trump maybe riled up or under his skin a little bit so that she could, when the softball was tossed to her, she could deflect in another way.
One of the things that really blew my mind, Maureen, was when, we have obviously what's going on in the country right now with the middle class getting crushed, the economy, we know the open border, the wars all over the world. And you're asking Trump about the Central Park Five. Like, to me, I was like, what is this guy talking about? The Central Park Five? This stand rightfully so. Trump's like, you're going back 40 years here. Why are we talking about the Central Park Five when people can't put food on the table? Like, to me, that was so out of touch. And it was all it was supposed to be a gotcha and a hit on President Trump. That's all that was there for.
It definitely was. And I think that, ABC and Kamala Harris wanted to make it seem like President Trump was racist and he's all about dividing this country. And it just showed you the fact that they had to go back to that. They're the ones that are divisive. They're the ones that are race baiting, not Donald Trump. He went, like you said, and said, we're going back 40 years. Like, why are we doing this? We need to go and talk about things that are relevant in this country right now. The open border and the economy. People shouldn't be struggling to put food on the table. They shouldn't be having to decide between paying their bills and putting food on the table. That's not what we should be doing. And I really liked at the very end, and I love how he waited until the very end to say to Kamala Harris, you know, you've been in office 3.5 years. Like you're saying you're going to do all these things. Why aren't you doing them now?
Yeah, like what she was saying, my plan is to do this. My plan is to do that. My plan is to, okay, well then why have you not done this? And then they'll say, oh, well, that's the argument back on Twitter is always, oh, well, she's the vice president, not the president. Yet during the debate, she keeps talking about what she's got accomplished while she was the vice president. Well, if you could accomplish that, why can't you accomplish this? And I just think back to the point with the race, like you would never see David Muir say to Kamala Harris, President Trump has got historic support from the black community, more than any other Republican candidate. Why do you think that is? Like he would never frame it in that way to kind of say, you realize that Trump's got more black support than any other Republican candidate ever. And why do you think that is? But they never framed any of the questions that way.
No, they didn't. They lobbed her softballs that she could attempt to hit out of the park, which I think that she botched a majority of those softballs that she was given. I do think that she did get under Trump's skin at one time talking about his rallies. That was clear, and I wish that he had not let her get under his skin. But I think that Team Trump needs to clip the part where she said to the public, to the American people, you need to go to one of Trump's rallies. That would be ideal for Team Trump to clip that, because your opponent is telling people to go to a Trump rally. You're going to have historic numbers on every Trump rally. If Kamala Harris is telling people to go, they're going to want to see what it's about.
They should clip that where he says, I was going to get her a MAGA hat, and then clip to her saying, you should go to a Trump rally. You know what I mean? They should put that whole thing together. It would be a nice piece.
I think maybe I'll do that and let Team Trump know.
And it just seemed like Trump, and the reason why he did get the reactions, because Trump was being authentic. He came there and was reacting to what was happening. Kamala Harris came in there and was putting on a show. I mean, that's the difference. Trump was the only authentic person in the room. The two moderators are trying to pretend like they're journalists. President Trump, like they're BS artists. That's all they are. And Kamala Harris looked phony and fraudulent. Trump was actually the only guy that was authentic. He spoke to the American people, and he came off that way. And by the way, he looked younger than Kamala Harris did. Like Kamala Harris looked nervous, shaky, especially in the onset. I mean, she looked very, very nervous there, and she didn't come off like a world leader or somebody that was very presidential. None of that came off from her.
Not at all. And the fact that, Trump can talk about things and policies from his first administration that worked. What policies from the Biden-Harris administration have worked? She has nothing to, stand her ground. She has no leg to stand on. She has no policies that have worked that she can be like, okay, well, I can combat what you're saying with the results from this. Everything that she has touched has turned to garbage. I'll be nice about my answer with that one. But the fact that she didn't come across as presidential, her mannerisms came across as very emotional, and you could tell that Trump got under her skin as well. And I believe, like you said, that he was being authentic. He was answering every question, authentically. And besides that, getting under his skin about the rallies, because like we've seen his rallies. His rallies are epic, and I've been to a few, and people aren't leaving early. So she did that to to get him, and that unfortunately did. But other than that, I think that every answer was extremely authentic, and he just proved that he deserves to be in office, and we need him in office come November, and being sworn in January. And that question about world leaders and her continuously saying that world leaders think that Donald Trump is a disgrace and they're laughing at Donald Trump, I think that she was deflecting and projecting, because world leaders actually think that she and Joe Biden are a disgrace, that she is being laughed at by world leaders. She even admitted she went over to try and have a peace agreement
that was brutal
between Ukraine and Russia, and then days later there was a war. So she's not respected by world leaders, and her even admitting that, she just set herself up. Like, you're saying that you're respected and you're not being laughed at by world leaders, but then days after you went for a peace agreement, we have a war.
Yeah, she walked right into that one, and Trump called her right out on it. And she's trying to say, "Oh, you're Putin's." They all try to say, "Oh, Putin's puppet," and all this other stuff. Meanwhile, Putin didn't do any of this while Trump was president. Like, why do you think that he invaded Crimea while Obama was in there? Why do you think he invaded Ukraine while Biden is in there, and he didn't do any of this when Trump was there? I mean, it would be, if it was the other way around, you could obviously say, "Hey, look, this guy, him and Trump are in on this together because he's doing all this stuff while Trump was in." He did nothing while Trump was in. So and then she talks about the Afghan withdrawal, saying, "Oh, we saved the American taxpayers money by getting out of this endless war." Yet yesterday, Blinken just pledged $717 million in economic funding to Ukraine. Again, we've given hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, but we saved a few pennies by having 13 Marines and soldiers killed by pulling out of Afghanistan too quick.
And she wouldn't accept. If you notice, they asked her, do you accept responsibility or do you regret anything that happened in that withdrawal? And she would not answer the question because she believes that they did a good withdrawal out of Afghanistan, which they did not. There was a plan in place and it wasn't executed properly. He wanted to get out as quick as possible and be known as the president that got us out of that endless war. And it wasn't done correctly. 13 service members lost their lives. I believe 48 were wounded. So they have to live with the long-term effects of that. And, they don't respect them. They've never said those 13 service members' names ever publicly. And it was just, as a veteran, I mean, I was frustrated and irritated with every lie that came out of her mouth, but the fact that she would not accept responsibility for that last night, that just infuriated me to my core.
I can't even begin to imagine how frustrating it must be. And also, too, when she was done giving that monologue where she basically was blaming Trump for the whole thing, David Muir didn't stop and say at the end of that, "Okay, so yes or no, do you take responsibility?" Like, he didn't press her like the way he did with Trump on every single issue. He just went on to the next thing. And then, of course, there's another thing that your dad had to miss. Did your dad get a chance to watch this? Was there any chance he could see it, or did he communicate with you about it?
So he does email myself and some of the members of the War Room team back, and we email back and forth daily, and they do have TVs in the prison that they can watch, but it's mainstream media. So of course, Rudy Giuliani had previously said, "Oh, your dad's he said it on War Room that my dad was being tortured, but that's not the case. What he was referencing is the fact that he has to watch mainstream media is torture and he can't watch War Room, but he was able to watch the debate." And then we emailed him after about the Taylor Swift endorsement of Kamala Harris, immediately after the debate. So that's kind of clear that she didn't do as well as they thought she was going to do, because the fact that you need Taylor Swift to come out and endorse you within like an hour of the debate finishing is not a good sign. But we were able to email, and he had been calling that endorsement was probably coming 48 hours prior to the debate. Wow. So the fact that it happened, his main message after that was, we really need to focus on getting out the vote efforts. That's what, since he's been in prison, he has said the two main things we need to focus on are election workers, like poll watchers, election integrity officials, and get out the vote. But especially after the debate and the Taylor Swift endorsement, we really, really need to hyper focus on getting out the vote efforts.
Yeah, and I want to get to a point about the U.S. mail that just went viral. But just to that point about Taylor Swift, it does seem like they were holding. I mean, she could have she was going to endorse Kamala no matter what. We know that she was with Joe Biden the last time, so it wasn't a secret that who do you think she's going to endorse? But they were holding that for a specific time where they felt she needed it the most. And it seems like right after the debate, they were like, "We got to do it now," because I think it was such a poor performance by her that they needed a big push right after that debate. And I think that's why they timed it that way.
I completely agree. The fact that, and it wasn't even like later that night. I mean, the debate ended pretty late, or even waiting until the following morning. It was within the hour of the debate ending. You thought that she did so poorly, because if she did as well as, the Harris-Walz campaign thought she was going to do, they probably would have saved it for Wednesday, not Tuesday night, like within 60 minutes of the debate ending.
You would save that strategically for another point where you think there's a problem. Like, that's what you would do.
You'd wait and see, if they agree to another debate. President Trump has said he would debate her 2 more times previous to this debate. Now, if they actually do debate, we'll see. But you would think that you would wait until, another time when she really messes up on the campaign trail to pull that endorsement out. But clearly they didn't think that she did that great if they're pulling it out so quickly.
And you know that she would never walk into a hostile environment the way Trump did during the debate Tuesday night. She would never walk into an unfriendly place, not have the questions, and have to have a rapid fire. She would never do it. But Trump goes right in. He's always been that way. Since the first day he announced for office, he's never been afraid to go in front of any media and go right at their face with it. And that's what people love and respect about him so much. She would never dare go into an unprotected or unsecured environment and go face to face with journalists because she's a fraud.
Oh, not at all. And I actually tweeted I believe I tweeted this during the debate, that she needed the help of a man for her first interview with the press, and she needed the help of a man again last night. She had a man running cover from ABC News, and she had Tim Walz by her side, running cover for her during that interview. So she cannot stand by herself. And that should tell every female voter out there, why would you want the first female president to be someone that needs a man by their side to help run cover for them? Do we really want Kamala Harris to be the first female president of the United States? No. Let's have someone stronger that can actually, be effective in the White House, close the southern border, be not a laughing stock to world leaders, to strengthen our military. I think that if we're going to have the first female president, and your viewers might not like this, war viewers might not like my answer on this one, but I think Tulsi Gabbard would be a good first female president, not Kamala Harris.
Well, Tulsi Gabbard comes off like a leader. I mean, she sounds strong. She talks confident. She doesn't sound like a phony and a politician when she speaks. And I think that's what draws. Same thing with Trump. He doesn't sound like a politician when he talks, and people are drawn to that. I had Tulsi on the show right prior to him picking his VP. A lot of people thought Tulsi was going to be a VP pick. But I think the fact that he picks J.D. Vance, but he has Tulsi on board. He has RFK Jr. on board. These are huge because these are 2 people that were prominent Democrats. Tulsi ran for president as a Democrat. RFK Jr.'s entire existence was in the Democrat Party. So that speaks volumes to how bad the Democrat Party has gotten. And it's awesome that they're on Team Trump now.
It does. And it shows you that they care more about saving this country and making it great again than they do about themselves. We've seen how far the Democrat Party has fallen. This is not the Democrat Party that my dad grew up in. This is not the Democrat Party that Tulsi or RFK Jr. grew up in. Even his dad and his uncle, this is not their Democrat Party anymore. It is so extreme that they don't want to associate with it anymore. And that's why they've left that party and have joined forces with someone, it's not about, in all honesty, not about politics. We want to make this country great again. We want to, not have a open border. We want to make it healthy again. Look at all the things we're doing to our children in this country. So I think that them leaving the Democrat Party and joining forces with the conservatives and the MAGA movement just shows you that it's not about party affiliation. It's not about politics. It's about saving this country.
And let's be honest, Maureen, if we had a fair and honest media in this country, they would have quickly pointed out that historic speech by RFK Jr. and how fantastic that was. But it's just like they mums the word on that, and they didn't highlight any of it. But that was a historical speech that he gave. And I just wanted to get to the point here. The Associated Press put this out. Election officials warn that widespread problems within the United States mail system could disrupt voting. And it seems like they're already starting this process with this mail-in ballots that was just such a disaster in 2020. And it's almost as if, I remember talking to Marjorie Taylor Greene about this, like nothing has been done. We had 4 years to try to do something to change the way all this is, and we've got none of that accomplished. Now they're trying to detach the the SAVE Act to another horrible spending bill. But this should already have been done. Voter ID should have already been mandatory by now, but they had 4 years to do it. They got nothing done. And now we're hearing already rumblings there's going to be a problem with the mail-in ballots again.
It's extremely frustrating, especially in a Republican-controlled House, that this wasn't handled prior to the 2024 election. But we can't go back in the past. We want to change the past, but we can't do that. So we need to focus on, one, getting out the vote, like I said before, so it's too big to rig, but also election integrity and how we're going to prevent the Democrats from cheating. And, there's many great efforts going on. Many people within the conservative movement who have different ideas of what should be done. You have Turning Point Action talking about chasing the ballot, Scott Pressler about registering people to vote and voting early. So I believe as conservatives and as the MAGA movement, we need to come together and figure out one plan and which one we're going to go with. Are we going to chase the ballots, vote on election day, or, chase the ballots, vote early? So it just, and especially with them already coming out and saying about the mail, it just shows you that they are preparing to cheat yet again. So we need to focus on how we are going to stop that. And, we need to, election integrity is a very important topic, but if we don't have as many people registered to vote, it's easier for them to cheat. So we need to make sure that we have as many Republicans registered to vote as possible, so it is too big to rig.
Great point. And I think also it's a great point, too, about getting people involved. I mean, this isn't the election to sit on the sidelines. There's so many people that are passionate about this. There's plenty of opportunity to become a poll watcher. You can go to these Trump's even website and figure out how you can get involved. I mean, you don't want to wake up November 6th and be like, oh, man, I should have done something here. I should have gotten involved. Now's the time. There's plenty of time now. You got 2 months. Get involved. And I think that's important. Obviously, register to vote and help get your friends and your family to register and vote, because this is a crisis. We don't get it right now. We're never going to get it back. Trump's not going to be around in 4 more years to run for us again. This is it. It's now or never.
I completely agree. And, I saw in different primaries how Democrats had a way bigger turnout in their primaries, and a lot of them were running uncontested races, whereas Republicans weren't running uncontested, and it was significantly less. So you need to make sure you're registered to vote, your family members, friends, but also, like you said, getting out and getting involved and getting active. If that means phone banking for President Trump, for Senate candidates, congressional candidates, local candidates in your area as well. Like whatever you can do to get involved and get that voter turnout, because, a lot of people are like, well, I don't think my vote matters. It does matter. Every vote matters and every vote counts. So we need to get everyone out to vote. And I know some people don't door knock anymore, but if your candidate in your local area is door knocking or having people door knock, volunteer to door knock. I for my congresswoman in the previous election, I wasn't even a resident of the state yet. I was trying to decide if I was going to move, and I'm friends with my congresswoman. I got out there and door knocked. I was, I was chased down the block by someone. So after that, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do this again, but I want to help any way I can. So if that means door knocking, phone banking, I'm getting active and involved as well.
Plus, also, you kind of get that feeling that when your candidate wins, you feel like, hey, I was a part of this. You can enjoy that victory along with them. And if your local candidate loses, you can say, well, I did everything I could. You know what I mean? You don't have that regret of like, oh, I wish I would have done more. And so the possibilities are there. So
and also to address really quickly, some people think that in certain states they don't need to vote because, oh, my state's blue, it's never going to turn red. There's some states that we don't think they can turn red. People think California, their vote doesn't matter. It does. But in states that Biden barely won in 2020, there are a high probability that Trump could flip these states. And so also congressional seats in those states and Senate seats in those states. So get involved and get active. Do not sit on the sidelines and think that someone else is going to fight this battle. It takes all of us to get involved to save this republic, because otherwise we won't have a republic left.
Well, no doubt the War Room posse is doing what they can do to make sure this happens. So what's coming up here on the War Room for the rest of the week? What do you guys got going on?
We're going to have a bunch of amazing guests, and just we've had a lot of people come on and talk about the ways to get involved and get active, different guests across different scopes of politics coming on and just sharing what you can do to make sure that we win in November.
And when we do win in November, the War Room will no doubt have played a major, major role in it. So, Maureen Bannon, it's always an honor to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me back here on the Alec Lace Show.
Thank you so much for having me on again, Alec. And I hope to come back again sometime soon.
We'll make it happen. All right, honored to have Maureen Bannon back on the podcast. What did you think about the interview? Hit me with a comment down below. Grateful. I'd love to get her back on again. I think she's right on the money with so many of the points. And to her point there too, with Trump getting upset about the rallies. The rallies, I think, speak for themselves, right? And I think, like I said to her, I think Trump was speaking just really off the cuff and just reacting to what was said rather than having a planned monologue like Harris did. And Harris was trying to bait him there, and they knew that if they did that, they'd probably get under his skin. And just to Trump, it's like, you know what? His rallies, the one here in New Jersey, wow, 100,000 people showed up to this guy's rally. So the rallies speak for themselves. And I do think that, him getting shot in the ear and not even being mentioned, the only time that was mentioned was when he brought it up. You would think that David Muir, the great independent journalist, would have said, hey, Kamala, your opponent was shot in the head at one of the rallies. Do you think it's time? What do you think about the temperature of the politics relating to some of the things that are being said back and forth? Like, you could have put her on the spot saying, Joe Biden has called all of his supporters a threat to democracy. MAGA extremists. How do you think that rhetoric, is that helpful? Like, he could have said something about that, but the only one who brought up the fact that he was shot was Trump himself. Imagine this. One of the candidates, a former president, was actually shot, almost assassinated, and during the debate, the moderators never even mention it. Like, what? How do you talk? How does this happen? So anyway, grateful to Maureen Bannon for coming on. And another one of the things that was in the debate, that one of the big things where Muir was attacking Trump on was this Ohio story, this Springfield, Ohio story, which broke about these Haitian illegals that have just stormed into Ohio. And they have taken over that town. And the people have had enough of it. So he went back and forth. Well, there's no proof that any of that has happened because, Trump was saying that they're eating pets and wildlife. Then the independent journalists have descended on Springfield. And so a lot of the stories are coming out from the people that live there that, yes, this is happening. But the bigger picture of this is that you have these migrants that have completely crushed this town. And again, I talked about this on Tuesday, obviously. But this next part here, this is going to prove to you that liberalism is a mental disorder, that Trump derangement syndrome is a mental disorder. Now, I talked about here on the Alec Lace Show last year, in August when this happened, an illegal immigrant, a Haitian, in Springfield, hits a bus full of kids. One of the kids dies. 20 other kids are injured, okay? So now Trump and Vance talk about that fact that you have an illegal immigrant, Haitian guy, which, by the way, Ohio is now sending troopers and $2.5 million to Springfield that has seen this influx of Haitian illegal immigrants. So Trump and J.D. Vance mentioned this story about this kid that was killed by this illegal immigrant. So the dad of this kid, and God bless him, I would never want to be in his shoes. My prayers go to him and his family. The guy lost his child, okay? But he is so smothered in Trump derangement syndrome that this guy actually said something that I don't think and I won't even repeat the words because I don't even want to speak them into the air. I mean, it's this bad. When you hear what this guy said, you will automatically understand just how bad liberalism can affect the mind. It is a mind virus. Just like wokeness, this liberalism, it will eat your brain alive. Listen to what his dad said. Now, he's tired of Trump and Vance using this story. So, because his son died in it. So he's so mad about that, he had to talk about this. And listen to what this guy said. Listen carefully.
We felt it would be in our best interest to be here after recent comments. You know, I wish that my son, Aiden Clark, was killed by a 60-year-old white man. I bet you never thought anyone would ever say something so blunt. I wish that my son, Aiden Clark, was killed by a 60-year-old white man.
You wish that it was a 60-year-old white guy? Like, could you imagine anybody ever saying this? How about, like, I wish that it never happened. I wish that, that you're so upset. Now, of course, he made a point, and he went on for about 4 minutes or something. He spoke about this, but he says that my son, he wasn't murdered. It was an accident. It was an accident that happened. Now, the accident was from Hermanio Joseph, who had no driver's license, driving on the wrong side of the road and hit a school bus that killed that guy's son and injured 20 other kids. And he was charged with vehicular homicide and involuntary manslaughter, found guilty, and sentenced to 9 to 13 years in prison, 9-year minimum. This guy is going to be in prison for this. All right? This is a guy now, this did not have to happen. This guy's son should be alive today. If the open border, Kamala Harris's open border, was tightened up and they didn't get rid of Trump's policies, this guy's son would be alive today. And he turns around and says he wishes that it was a 60-year-old white guy? Like, this is a serious mental patient that would say something like that. How could you even speak those words into existence? Because you don't want Trump and Vance to use their hate-filled language? What hate-filled language? It's the truth. If Trump was still president and his policies were in place, your son is alive. Yet he doesn't care. He would rather... This is unthinkable what this guy is saying here. Unthinkable. But that's how bad. It reminds me almost of this woman in Brooklyn about a year ago whose boyfriend was stabbed. And this guy, they were like... what do you call them? Activists or whatever it was. And it was on video. They're sitting on a park bench or a street bench, and a guy walks by and stabs her boyfriend and kills him and tries to stab her too. And when the cops come, she's so afraid to get the guy in trouble because he's black, she won't even say the description of the guy that just killed her boyfriend. Because liberalism has got her so fried in the brain that she didn't want to sound racist by saying it was a black guy that killed her boyfriend right on the street like a dog. I mean, these people are crazy, man. So you have these Haitian immigrants, and Muir's a lot. This story is going to explode in the face of the Democrats because they've tried to act as if these people in Springfield are irrelevant, then they don't matter, and that their town got taken over by Haitian illegal immigrants is no big deal. Now, there's already plenty of video and pictures of these guys cutting off the heads of farm animals and taking the bodies and leaving the heads all over the place. And so you have more and more stories that have come out of this Springfield. Laura Loomer has been all over it. She's got police files, police cases where they talk about pets that have gone missing. So this whole story is going to break, and ABC is going to have egg on their face for challenging Trump on it. There's no question about it. There's a catastrophe happening in Springfield, Ohio with the hungry Haitians. And here's another one that was embarrassing too. Here's Time Magazine. They had to eat crow and make a humiliating correction because they said that when Trump called out Kamala Harris for supporting taxpayer-funded gender surgery for illegal immigrants, Time Magazine called out Donald Trump, and they made a big stink about it. So now, humbly, they had to actually issue a correction on this, and here's what it was. The original version of this story mischaracterized as false Donald Trump's statement accusing Kamala Harris of supporting transgender operations on illegal aliens in prison. As a presidential candidate in 2019, Harris filled out a questionnaire saying she supported taxpayer-funded gender transition treatment for detained immigrants. And this was a theme of the night, right? Like when Trump was saying that Kamala Harris wanted to bail out the George Floyd rioters, she's shaking her head. No, that's well documented that she did that. So, and one thing that I don't think was talked about at all, it wasn't talked about at all except for that piece, was the sexual transitioning of children and the sexualizing of our kids and men playing in women's sports. None of that even came out. We're talking about the Central Park Five. You have men that are knocking out women playing in women's sports. You have girls that are getting beaten by women. You have girls sharing a locker room with men. And we didn't even discuss it. We didn't even talk about it. Not one question came up about it. All right? But you're asking about the Central Park Five? A 40-year-old case? What the hell is going on? It's so stupid. And again, they tried the race bait. That's what they try to do with the race baiting. I talked about that with Maureen a little bit. But it's like one of the things, too, Trump could have easily had said to this. It's easy to, Monday morning quarterback this thing. But Trump could have easily had responded to that question of David Muir when he was saying, oh, you were asked about Kamala Harris being black. Sometimes she's not. Sometimes she's... Trump could have said, yeah, I said that at the Black Independent Journalist Convention that Kamala was invited to, but decided she was too good to show up. She didn't show up to answer any questions. I showed up in a hostile environment like I'm doing right now and answered the questions. That's what happened on that day. But they wanted to just try to race bait him and the whole thing. It was just a disgrace, the whole thing. What say you? Get your comment down below. Hit me with a something in the live chat. And let me know your thoughts on today's podcast. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. Don't forget to follow and share the broadcast with everybody in your neighborhood, in your network. And also, I've got the locals down there if you want to support me. One thing that you'll find is very different about me than the other influencers. I wouldn't consider myself an influencer, maybe a part-time guy influencer. But one thing that separates me from them is they are paid by a lot of these other big corporations that are involved in it. I am like you. I'm a blue-collar worker. I'm a railroad mechanic. I've been doing that for 25 years now. I'm in my 25th year working for the railroad as a mechanic. And I do this stuff only twice a week because it's the best that I could do. I would love to do it 5 days a week, but I'm working midnights on the railroad. So I wake up and then jump into these interviews and doing this stuff. I would love to dedicate as much time to it as I can because I think it's important. I think winning this country back from these Marxists is important. So that's why I'm taking the time to do it. So I just want to let you guys know I'm very much like you. I'm not like a phony like Kamala Harris is trying to say, oh, I'm out here on these streets. And most of these other journalists that you listen to are coming from a booth somewhere in Manhattan or some big city or some studio. I'm in my bedroom closet here. I'm just telling you what I think. I'm blessed to get all these guests, senators, congressmen. I get all these people that come on here and join me on the show because of you, the listener, and your support. So if you like what I'm doing, if you want to hear more of what I'm doing, please support me with the locals. I'm going to try to now, I'm streaming this year on the locals as well. I'm going to try to start doing, after each broadcast, I'm going to start doing a question and answer period only on the locals. So we'll start to see if we can get some people to filter in that way. We'll do a question and answer period. And again, keep your suggestions coming as well, because I would love to hear them. And I know you guys asked me about Matt Gaetz and about Congressman Grassley. I've put out feelers for both of them. I've gotten responses from both of them. I'm working on it as I'm working on as I always do, trying to give you guys the best guests possible. So please follow, support me on the locals. Make sure you follow the channel here on Rumble. And I'm going to be back next week on Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with another live broadcast. So hope you enjoyed it. God bless you parents out there. God bless you listeners. God bless our police, first responders, our military, our veterans. God bless America, and I will catch you guys on Tuesday. God bless you. Have a great weekend.
You're listening to the Alec Lake Show. The future is family.
Promo code FATHERHOOD. Go to mypillow.com and everything we have on sale there. Actually, we brought in the percale sheets. The queen size, $34.98 a set. King size, $39.98 a set. That's unheard of. It's the lowest price in history. And everything else on there that we have, you can save up to 80%. We don't have any middlemen. We don't have box stores and stuff. They canceled on MyPillow. They even canceled my book to get my book out, So use that promo code FATHERHOOD, everybody, and And please help us out, and thanks for ones that you have already helped. And by the way, you'll be helping yourself to the best sleep in history, period.
I got to tell you, that mattress topper is the best product I have in the house, Mike, no doubt.
And that turns any bed into the best bed in history. If you've got an old bed, new bed, doesn't matter. You put the mattress topper on there, and it changes everything. You need a different input to get a different output. People waking up every day going, maybe my bed will be better tonight. No, you need a MyPillow mattress.